business or state, then you owe it to yourself to call this number. Let our experts help guide you through the process of negotiating a tax settlement. Call this number or go to tax10000.com.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-905-9814. That's 1-800-905-9814.
Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. We've got a busy Tuesday for you. Tonight, a top economist. He'll join us to discuss why the nearly $2 trillion COVID relief package is a good bet for America and so critical as we speak. He'll also tell us who it's going to help the most. In addition, we show you the latest allegations against Governor Cuomo and also how he's responding to him. There's a third accuser now. Plus, the FBI director testified about the Capitol riot today and spoke about warnings that the Bureau received prior to the January 6th riot. We're going to show you what he said, plus other highlights from a contentious hearing. Also, a psychologist who works with teenagers joins us to discuss the toll that COVID is taking on our kids. But let's begin with in-depth coverage of the Biden administration's single most important priority, and I'd argue, obviously, the most important thing to America beyond just the vaccine in battling COVID with a stimulus bill. In a moment, we will have extended conversations with Mark Zandi, one of the most respected economists in the country. But first, the bill itself, what's in it and where the politics are. And for that, we turn to senior political correspondent Andrew Whitman.
And Rich, the clock is running less than 2 weeks now to get this bill passed through the Senate and signed into law. The target date is March 14th. That's a week from this coming Sunday. Unemployment benefits that were expanded in the last stimulus are set to expire on the 14th. So the bill has to be signed by then to prevent them from lapsing again. Again, the bill comes in right now at $1.92 trillion. That's a number that could change if the bill is amended. It would give $1,400 checks to tax filers, another $1,400 per dependent, and $3,000 child tax credits, all of which, by the way, the payouts decrease for people whose incomes are at $75,000 a year and above. The bill's got billions in aid to states, cities, and Indian tribes, plus money to help reopen schools, protect transit systems, and aid ailing pension plans. That money, known as state aid, comes as governors across the country warn of harsh rollbacks in funding to critical things like public hospitals, schools, police, and more, as every state in the country faces deficits from all the spending they did on COVID. The bill would also extend enhanced unemployment and give unemployment help to other workers as well. And it provides billions of dollars to expand COVID testing, as well as funding other scientific research on the virus. Now, the bill did not get a single Republican vote in the House, but this is a bipartisan bill. Overall, 76% of all Americans support the Biden stimulus plan. When you ask just Republicans, full 50% of them say they support the stimulus plan as well. Again, despite all the Republican objections we've heard in Congress, even the now dashed $15 minimum wage has majority support in Congress. With the minimum wage hike no longer a part of the bill, the main Republican objections have shifted. Some now suggest that either no stimulus is needed or a smaller stimulus might get the job done. Others are now focusing on that state aid, continuing the old and debunked complaint that any state deficits are just the result of bad governance. But right now, most Senate headcounts have the vote right at 50-50, meaning Vice President Kamala Harris would have to break a tie. But that also means even a single Democratic defection on the bill would all but sink its chances. So mollifying moderate Democrats like West Virginia's Joe Manchin and Arizona's Kristen Sinema are essential to getting the bill passed. Rich?
Andrew, thank you very much. I want to bring in our guest, Mark Zandi. Mark is chief economist of Moody's Analytics. Mark, a lot I want to unpack, but I want to start off, as you did, with half full. If the predictions are right, and we don't know how the variant works, but let's at least look on the sunny side for once. If they're right, you say around July 4th here, we'll have herd immunity in this country. And everybody is going to want to go back to the world that we used to know. There's a lot of demand here. People are going to want to go spend. The economy should get a kickstart just by the very nature here of what we've gone through in the past year, right?
Yeah, that's right. We've had 50 million Americans vaccinated. We have another 50 million or so that have been sick. So that's about 100 million people with some form of immunity. To get to herd immunity, we need to get to about 250 million. And if you do the arithmetic based on how many people are getting vaccinated and how many people are getting sick right now, sometime between Memorial Day as late as July 4th, but certainly by July 4th, conservatively speaking, I think we'll feel a lot better about the pandemic. And once that happens, they start coming out. They start doing the things they haven't been doing. And high-income households, high net worth households have saved a lot of money. So they have a lot of cash, a lot of pent-up demand. That combination is going to be pretty powerful. So we'll get a lot of growth later this year.
And while there's never unanimity in everything, in most economic circles, the argument has been, I know that you support this as well, the package that comes out of the government, better to go big in this particular case. And you believe the $1.9 trillion package, if passed, does it the right way in that they're putting money in the pockets of people who need it most because the pain of the pandemic has not been shared equally?
Yeah, that's right. If I were king for the day, I'd probably do things a bit differently here and there. But, broadly speaking, certainly given the political constraints, I think this is landing in a pretty good place. And, most significantly, it's providing a lot of support, financial support to lower income, low middle income households, minority groups, people who then, came into the pandemic behind the financial eight ball. And of course, they've gotten completely crushed by the pandemic. They don't own a home. They don't own any stocks. Their healthcare has been relatively poor. They're the folks that have suffered unemployment or underemployment. So they need the help, and they'll need it, a significant amount of help to get back to square one. So, yeah, I think it's, a very good package in that respect. It's targeted to the people who need it most.
And let's talk about some of the highlights from the package. Obviously, a $1,400 check per person. You can do the math. If it's a couple, you add child credits to it. There's an infusion of money. And the good thing, Mark, is to simplify it, they're going to spend the money.
Yeah, these folks, they still struggling with unemployment and underemployment. The unemployment rate today is still 6.3% nationwide. And of course, the Black, Hispanic unemployment rate is still in double digits. You still have a lot of people who are working, but they're not getting the hours that they need or want. So you got people who have even stepped out of the workforce, right? Because they need to go home and take care of their kids because they're not in school, and so they haven't been working. Not even count as unemployed. So these folks really are under a lot of stress. And this money will go a long way to helping them. And as soon as they get that money, they'll go out and spend it. You could see it, for example, in the last couple of months. Remember back in December, the support was running out. The Congress and the Trump administration were debating whether they should provide another round of support, and they didn't pass a bill until the very end of December. So if you look at the economic data in December, it was very, very weak. We lost jobs in December. In January, the Trump administration, Congress passed a bill at the end of December. The money started flowing into the economy in January, and the economy came right back to life. In January, retail sales were up 5%. It feels like we're off and running here. So the government support is really, really critical to those lower income households, and they will spend that money quickly once they get it.
And beyond just the check, the premise at least would be that there'd be an extension of unemployment insurance. Moreover, they'd stop evictions and foreclosures. They'd help with child care support. On top of that, there'd be a conscious effort to feed Americans that are struggling, whether it be through SNAP or through WIC, and also employing some of the restaurants to help with this Feed America program. Again, the idea is that just because the doors can open up, it's not that everyone's going back to a job or in a position right now where they can make up for the past year. That's at least, as I understand, and correct me, Mark, that's where the focus is, that the bottom doesn't drop out on the bottom half or bottom third of the country.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think, we just got to remember the pandemic is still on. We're talking about herd immunity, and I think we're on track to achieve it by mid-year. but we still got a long way to go here, and that it's a long time between here and there. And of course, there's a lot of uncertainty around all of it. Things could still go off the rails. So given all that, I think it's very important, critical, that the federal policymakers can continue to provide that kind of support to the hardest pressed. Now, there are some elements of the plan that, may be larger than is needed based on what we know right now. But, there's a lot of uncertainty here, and things can certainly go off script. The other thing I'd point out is, it's very difficult for the federal government to target the money, to design the programs and the support in a way that goes exactly where the need is, just because of the politics of things. I mean, you got 50 states, each 50 states wants to get their share of the money. Of course, the need isn't distributed across the country evenly. So given that, that very difficult reality, it makes sense to go big, to have, use more funds so that, it gets to it ultimately helps the places that need it. Some places are going to get more than they certainly need, but it's an unfortunate consequence of the fact that you got lots of places that really need the help, and we need to get it to them.
The one area, Mark, and maybe it is bipartisan, but people are afraid to stick their necks out in certain political circles, is state aid. The idea that any state in the union wants to go and say to folks, okay, well, I'm either going to have to raise taxes to make up for the huge shortfall, or I'm going to cut essential services like fire, police, medical care even, et cetera, is political suicide. I've seen a few, certainly some Republican mayors and maybe a Republican governor, let's say in West Virginia, a few places, saying that as well. But that's a huge part of this. Every state capital is dying for the federal government to help subsidize them so they don't go through what could be only described as a horrific budgetary decision.
Yeah, here's one case, though, Rich, that I would, you could be more targeted. I mean, we've done a bit of work trying to understand the budget shortfalls of state and local governments. And one thing we've found is that it's not across all 50 states. So there are a dozen states that have very significant fiscal problems, mostly states that depend on the tourist industry, like Florida or Nevada, or the energy industry because of the collapse in oil and commodity prices. And then there's another 8, 9, 10 states that are struggling. They probably could manage through. It'd be difficult, but they could manage through. And that leaves the other half of states that are doing okay, pretty well. So if I were king, what I would do is probably scale back some of that aid and use that money for the next package around infrastructure, because I do think infrastructure spending, broadband and public infrastructure and basic roads and bridges is something that would be very, very helpful to the economy on the other side of the pandemic to get back to full employment as fast as possible. This package is about relief, kind of bridging to the end of the pandemic, but on the other side, we're still going to have millions of people that are permanently unemployed, and we need to get back to work, and that money could be used for that. So, I'm criticizing around the edges here, but that's one place where, I think that there could be some changes to make it more efficacious.
Up next, more with Mark Zandi, including his thoughts when it comes to raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and also how we can help the people who need it most.
Important healthcare news for all Americans. Whether insured, uninsured, or on Medicare, if you feel sick at midnight or your child runs a high fever, you want to immediately speak with a doctor. Now with Telemed One, you have a doctor on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Use your landline, mobile, tablet, or computer to speak or video with a board-certified doctor in your state. With Telemed One, you're quickly connected with a doctor, get diagnosed, and if medication is needed, a prescription is sent electronically to your local pharmacy. According to the American Medical Association, up to 75% of doctor, urgent care, and ER visits can be safely managed by a telemedicine plan like Telemed One. Don't delay. Telemed One is about $1 a day with no per call or video fees. Members and family get unlimited video and phone usage. Get protected now. Everyone is accepted. No insurance needed.
After my home was burglarized, I knew I needed to get a home security system. So I did my research and read reviews on Consumer Affairs. So I called.
To help choose the right home security system, search Consumer Affairs to read actual customer reviews and find offers like free equipment and monitoring plans starting at less than $1 a day.
Protect your home. An ADT authorized premier provider wants to help you feel safe by offering you a complete home security system, free, featuring $850 in free equipment with professional monitoring at our lowest rate, starting at less than $1 a day, with installation starting at $99 and 36-month monitoring contract. Upgraded packages require additional install fee for new customers only. Termination fees apply.
I don't think people realize how inexpensive it can be to protect your home and family. That's why I tell everyone to call ADT.
Call 1-800-761-0578. That's 1-800-761-0578.
Attention timeshare owners. This is an urgent consumer alert from the Timeshare Exit Hotline, a national company specializing in helping consumers legally get out of their expensive timeshare contracts. We're offering you a way to legally get rid of your timeshare. So if you're fed up with the maintenance fees that keep on coming and want to learn if you can terminate your timeshare legally and permanently, call today. Even if you've tried before and were unsuccessful in getting rid of your timeshare, call today and see if we can help. We offer a complete 100% unconditional client satisfaction guarantee. Make this completely free call and learn how we can help you legally put an end to your timeshare nightmare once and for all. You have nothing to lose, so call right now to qualify and receive a free consultation. You can terminate your timeshare legally and permanently, but you've got to call now. Call the number on your screen today. It's a free call.
And welcome back. At the top of the show, economist Mark Zandi and we discussed the stimulus plan and why he says it will cause the economy to get back on its feet. Zandi and we also got into the idea of pushing to hike the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Some say we can't afford it, but he and others say that's exactly what we need. Also, what about the argument about helping the richest first? Is that a mistake we can't afford to make this time around? One thing that was part of the original rescue plan, and we know what the parliamentarians said, and it doesn't seem that there's an appetite to find other ways to raise the minimum wage, staggering it to eventually get to $15. I get the politics of it. I don't have to agree with it, but in the end, I've read economist after economist, and almost everybody, again, takes the position this would be good for the economy net. Yes, there are some small businesses that would struggle, especially if they're paying on the bottom end of the minimum wage right now. But in the long term, it's healthier to have the lowest income earners at least at something remotely approaching a living wage.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you know, it has to be designed well. You don't want to raise the minimum wage too far, too fast, get ahead of market wages, because then you have the negative consequences of people losing their job, and the net benefit to low-income workers is not as good as large as it should be. But if it's designed properly, and, you know, most of the proposals that are being thought of, you know, $15, you know, minimum wage by mid-decade, you know, that's, I think, well designed. It's not getting too far ahead of out-of-market wages. So the net benefit of that to low-income workers, to those people who've been hit hardest by the pandemic, is a positive. You know, you will lose some jobs, but on net, it's a positive for those workers that are most hard-pressed.
Mark, there's been a lot of fears people have said about inflation, and I think that's a little bit of a premature worry given where we are right now. Deficits, I get it, but this plan at least wasn't put in without a mechanism to also get revenue on the backside. Talk about those dual concerns and how much you really think they ought to drive this conversation.
Yeah, inflation, that's putting the cart before the horse. I mean, we've been worried about low inflation, disinflation, deflation. Feels like, you know, for most of my, my professional career, you know, last 25, 30 years, Fed's struggled to get inflation back even close to its, target, 2% target. So, I'd say bring it on. I mean, if we have a problem with inflation, first of all, it would be a bit of a surprise, but I think the Federal Reserve knows exactly what to do to, bring that inflation back in line. So, but I don't think that should be affecting our decisioning around policy today. We need to get back to full employment as fast as possible. So, I'm not that concerned about, I'm not concerned about that at this point. On deficits and debt, that's a problem for another day. Economists are wont to say, and I would agree, there is no free lunch. But there was really no choice here. If lawmakers had not come forward and provided the kind of support they have and are still providing, the economy would have evaporated and the hit to the government's fiscal situation even worse. Our deficits and debt would be even larger. So it's a Hobson's choice. There's really no good choice. Lawmakers took the least bad choice. But at the end of the day, we have larger deficits and debt. So once we're back to full employment, hopefully a year and a half, 2 years down the road, if everything sticks to script, then we have to pivot and we do have to focus on our fiscal situation. And that will require spending restraint, but it will also require tax increases. The combination of those two things will be ultimately necessary, in my view.
Mark, this one is not going to be steeped in, metrics or models. It's just a feel. But I got a lot of friends in the financial sector, and a lot of them have told me a variation of, hey, listen, I'm working a third as hard as I used to. I'm having my best year. And then I'm seeing so many stories about people through no fault of their own getting really hurt. There's not a bad guy in the scenario I'm laying out, but it kind of gave me a little bit of recollection going back to 2008, where even some of the smartest guys couldn't explain what a derivative was or a synthetic financial instrument. And now I'm hearing other guys talking about, hey, let's talk about sparks. I'm not taking you down that rabbit hole tonight, but the chasm between have and have-nots, take morality out of it, it's getting dangerously wide. It's been that way for a while, but it seems to be growing even worse. The one thing about this package is, at least, not that it'll get equity, but you're at least going to the people hurting the most. And when you're out of a pandemic where it was no one's fault, I just think people ought to be a little bit more conscious of that in both the legislative class and even in the financial class, that people are going to start to turn around and say, what's going on here?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, even before the pandemic, we had this large gap between the haves and the have-nots. And the pandemic, of course, has not been ecumenical in its impact. It's really been incredibly hard on those same folks that came into this in very difficult financial situations. This group of folks don't own any stock, so they're not benefited from the wrong stock values. Most of these folks don't own their own home, and they're paying higher rent. Their rent has gone up. Their health care is not quite as good. And of course, these are the same groups that have been hit hardest by the pandemic, lost their jobs, lost their hours, lost their wages. And so on the other side of the pandemic, the gap between the haves and have-nots will be even larger. And it's going to take a lot of hard work and persistent policy designed to help address this issue. And it's one of the reasons, again, I think the American Rescue Plan is directed in the right way, because it's directed at trying to help those people. But it also means the next package of fiscal support that we start debating, in a month or two, will need to also be targeted at helping those folks to try to bring that gap, to close that gap. Because if we don't, it obviously has significant economic implications, but it also has major societal and political implications as well.
I'm also curious if you think that government and the idea of government is going to be really be assessed on how this experiment works. And I've told this story before, but when he was then Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, he talked about growing up. And he grew up in poverty in, I remember, Searchlight, Nevada. And he said on his wall, they framed a burlap sack that carried flour to feed the family through the Depression. And it had a picture of FDR on it. They obviously looked back then, if the government was your only source to get by, differently than now. But government's looked at it as a boogeyman, that it's part of the problem, never part of the solution. If the administration can get this right, do you think it's possible it changes the dynamic, that government can actually be looked to for help when help's most needed?
That's a fantastic point, and you're absolutely right. And it begins with the pandemic, right? I mean, it begins with the vaccination process. So far, so good. I think the Biden administration has really done a very good job here. But if they're able to keep things on the rails, continue to vaccinate 1.5 to 2 million people a day, maybe more, get us back to herd immunity, as we were talking about earlier, by mid-year, summer, by July 4th. I think that will lend a lot of confidence to people around the ability of government to do good, particularly when it's most needed. I mean, the government is critical in all times, but it's absolutely vital in a crisis. And, that's when the government, and when I say government, that's us collectively. We have each other's backs in the worst of times. And if the Biden administration can execute here, and again, I think so far so good, I think that's going to lend a lot of confidence. And then if we get these fiscal packages, and I think we will, and they work as I would anticipate, we get back to full employment, 12, 18, 24 months from now, I think that is going to usher in a lot of confidence, to support a lot of confidence in the ability of government to do good when that good is most needed. And I think it will change a lot of minds with respect to how important the role of government is. Something that has really been under pressure and under siege really for the last couple of generations.
Hey, Mark, I really do appreciate you making the time for us. Thank you so much.
Anytime, Rich. Thank you.
All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to switch gears here. We'll have the very latest when it comes to the allegations against embattled Governor Andrew Cuomo. We're going to tell you about the third accuser now and why her story different than the previous two.
When you fall and can't get help, you will lie on the floor for hours or days in constant, terrible anguish, which often results in a tragic outcome. But with Life Alert, one touch of a button can get you help fast.
Don't worry, help is on the way.
With any of Life Alert's 3 emergency systems, help can be summoned immediately, whether at home,
I've fallen and I can't get up.
in the bathroom,
I've fallen in the shower.
or on the go.
Help! I'm in the park and I can't get up.
And batteries never need charging. Life Alert saves a life every 11 minutes.
For a free Life Alert brochure, call 1-800-215-6582. That's 1-800-215-6582. Call now. 1-800-215-6582.
Remember when taking a hot bath was the best part of your day? And for some, it can be hard and even not safe just getting in. Older bathtubs can be as high as 20 inches. Let's face the facts. As we get older, our knees and backs start to hurt us. Getting in and out of an old bathtub can be difficult and even dangerous. Jacuzzi Bath Remodel, a name you know and trust, has the perfect solution for you. We call it the tub to shower conversion. We'll remove your old bathtub and the need to step over a dangerously high threshold, replacing it with the safety and luxury of a low-profile walk-in shower. Advanced materials mean no more mold or mildew from an old bathroom. And all this in about a day. As a special bonus to you, you'll get a special extra safety feature for free. So please call now.
This is important news for people who have taken Zantac or its generic ranitidine and then suffered from cancer. Zantac and generic ranitidine have been linked to cancers such as bladder cancer and kidney cancer. According to the FDA, Zantac and ranitidine contain NDMA, a known cancer-causing agent. NDMA has been linked to cancers of the bladder, kidney, colon, esophagus, liver, ovaries, pancreas, and other cancers. If you or a loved one took Zantac or ranitidine and were then diagnosed with cancer, call the lawyers at Davis & Crump right now to see if you're eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Call the lawyers at Davis & Crump right now if you or a loved one took Zantac or generic ranitidine and were then diagnosed with bladder cancer, kidney cancer, or any of these cancers. Call now to see if you're eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Our first consultation is free, and we don't get paid unless you get paid. Call Davis & Crump right now. Operators are standing by.
If these allegations, if these charges are proven, there's just no way he can govern. I've known the governor a long time. I used to work closely with the governor. I became increasingly disillusioned, as have so many people who worked with him closely, by what I saw. And the abusive behavior, the threatening behavior goes way back. It's gotten worse in many ways over the years, but it's not new.
We'll talk about Mayor de Blasio in a little bit, but there is the mayor here talking about Governor Cuomo as more allegations surface against Governor Cuomo. And now another prominent Democrat is calling for Cuomo to step down. I want to bring Andrew back in here for the latest.
And one of the highest ranking Democrats that we've heard from on this, Rich, the latest lawmaker bailing on Andrew Cuomo is Congresswoman Kathleen Rice of New York, tweeting that Cuomo must resign. Many lawmakers on the state level now supporting a full investigation of the governor or demanding that he leave office.
I know that there is a pattern of abusive and manipulative behavior from him. I do think that it is time for our governor to resign.
As we speak, the New York State Legislature is moving to strip Cuomo of his emergency powers to deal with COVID. And now a third accuser has come forward, but this one is different from the other two. This young woman never worked for Cuomo. Anna Rausch said she met the governor at a wedding and he touched her lower back after she removed his hands. He then put his hands on her cheeks and, according to her, asked if he could kiss her. The other women, Charlotte Bennett and Lindsay Boylan, did work for Cuomo, and they say he sexually harassed them. Now the Attorney General's office in the state is moving ahead with an investigation, saying this is a responsibility they do not take lightly and that all allegations should be taken seriously. The governor also issued a statement. I'll read just a part of it for you. Quote, "I never intended to offend anyone or cause any harm. At work sometimes I think I am being playful and make jokes that I think are funny. I now understand that my interactions may have been insensitive or too personal, and that some of my comments, given my position, made others feel in ways I never intended." Rich?
We should note that it is still a fraction of the Democrats needed to push this over the hump here, where a resignation or an impeachment is inevitable. We're not there yet, but this probe's going to happen. The governor, I think, was short-sighted where he thought he could have managed the investigation, but nonetheless, it's happening. The Attorney General is going to do this. Listen, there is the allegations, and then there's some of the political agendas. I think of Assemblyman Lee, and I certainly think of Mayor de Blasio, who impossibly made Governor Cuomo sympathetic to some, given his being on the receiving end of chew-outs by the governor. We're conflating, I think, a lot of things. The governor has been known famously for having sharp elbows. People celebrated him for those sharp elbows during the COVID pandemic, where he went after, and the recipient was President Trump for many of those. I don't think the states can be well served by localizing basically the response instead of it being centralized.
I think that's a terrible decision.
But we are where we are. The governor's going to have to own some of the things, but we are in uncharted territories, Andrew. I think back to what we saw with certainly Al Franken in Minnesota. A lot of people thought the process was rushed, that he never got his day. Other Democrats, by the way, were the ones doing the pushing. This was not a partisan effort. Senator Gillibrand is the one most thought of that made his exit, some thought premature, some thought deserved. We'll leave that for another time. I think this should play out at the Attorney General investigative probe. I don't know if more doesn't come out, if there's enough to end his political career, let alone to end this term prematurely. But if more comes out, depending on what it is, governor's got a real problem. He's got a problem already, but it becomes maybe untenable depending what happens next.
I think he's actually at the point, Rich. I think whatever his, emergency relief system is here, he's got to break the glass on it right now. Give a press conference where he answers every question, or do a lengthy sit-down interview, and here's why. Because you're right. The facts don't necessarily add up at this point from what we know to cause for his impeachment or resignation. But he's going to lose more Democratic support in the Assembly and in the legislature because New York is such a Democratic state that every Democrat in the state is basically waiting in line for positions above them to open up. And if Cuomo is no longer the top Democrat in the state, it opens up everyone along the way.
Just for folks who aren't aware with what Andrew's talking about, the three big jobs in New York, the governor and the two Senate jobs. The two senators in New York aren't going anywhere. Gillibrand or Schumer, they have no logical places to go, to a place in the administration. So then you have the governor's position. Obviously, the governor has had a lockdown on that, has the Cuomo name here for a better part of a generation almost, with a few exceptions. I get what you're saying. People have been waiting. They don't see a way that they can cut to the head of the line. This may be their opportunity. But I got to think that where we are right now and the approval ratings will show the polls right now. These have been done before the most recent revelations, but still, the governor popular overall in New York compared to a lot of other chief executives of states. There's got to be more. I'm sorry, and I know that we're in delicate times, but allegations, harassment, or worse have to be taken with the utmost of seriousness. But I haven't seen enough yet, Andrew, for this to end a career. And again, there are allegations. He may have said that one of the employees, he flatly denies one of them. The other employee, he said maybe she felt inappropriate by something I said. He said he didn't intend it that way. It'll come out in the probe one way or the other. But there's just not enough there for me.
If this was a court trial, I would agree with you 100%. There's not enough evidence there to convict him on anything at this point. It's he said, she said, 3 times over, if you will. But I don't think that's where we are. First of all, Cuomo has said barely anything about this. And when he did start talking about the assemblyman who said he was harassing him or the first allegation, Cuomo stuck his foot in his mouth both of those times. He has not given a cogent defense of himself. He hasn't given any defense of himself. The only thing that we're seeing from the governor right now is that photo of his hands on the face of the latest accuser. And that photo, while not showing anything untoward other than maybe some bad judgment, doesn't make him look any better. And because the politics of this, I mean, that's not a great image for the governor.
It's not, but Andrew, we're talking about where is the standard? Is that now the standard to have somebody fired?
Are you looking for a constant standard in all of this? Because this is politics. This is you know, whatever the art is of what's available and what's happening in the moment.
But we do on this program denounce the mob.
Sure.
And when it moves too fast. Now, I'm not connoting one to the other. Listen, I got daughters, okay? So it's not like none of this hasn't struck me, but, you know, if the conflation that we do in this moving time, I'll only say the other point to this. And I've had my issues with Governor Cuomo over the years. And by the way, if anyone believes that he is rough around the edges, you're right, he is. And that's an off-camera relationship. That said, though, he's been in Albany for 2/3 of his professional life, both working for his governor, who was the attorney general, and now the governor many times over. That these stories, and you know this, Andrew, all of a sudden materialize out of thin air in 1 year does not fit the normal narrative. Let the facts play out is my only point. Let's not have a rush of judgment.
And I'm just saying, if he doesn't change the politics soon, the politics will change that judgment.
You very well may be right. And again, we're going to be talking about a lot more of this tomorrow with the dean of the Albany news coverage, the Albany chief correspondent for the New York Times here. He'll be joining us tomorrow for the very latest in the state capital of New York. When we come back, though, the FBI director testifying on Capitol Hill today about the Capitol Hill riot. After the break, we're going to show you what Christopher Wray said about the warnings about the violence the Bureau received before the attack.
Eight years ago, my daughter called to say she was expecting our first grandchild. But I never actually heard her say that. And the first time my granddaughter called me Papa, I didn't hear that one either. Can you imagine? Oh, I know I lost some of my hearing, but I was embarrassed, too stubborn to admit that. For Father's Day a few years ago, Gina and Ryan bought me a nano hearing aid. And my precious Ryan, I love hearing her call me Papa. I love hearing everything again.
What have you not heard by not wearing a hearing aid? You're going to have many more special moments in your life. Don't miss hearing a single one of them. Call Nano. Order your full pair of hearing aids for only $297.
1-800-259-1401.
Make today the day you finally start hearing better again with Nano hearing aids.
1-800-259-1401. 1-800-259-1401.
Mary and Shirley both need oxygen. Shirley lost her freedom the day she went on oxygen, but Mary has the ultra-compact Inogen 1 G4 oxygen concentrator from Inogen. It's the smallest and lightest model we've ever made. Shirley is forced to miss out on everyday activities. Mary fully enjoys her life. Shirley has to wait for tank deliveries and worries about running out of oxygen. But Mary's Inogen 1 G4 makes its own oxygen, so she'll always have the oxygen she needs anytime, anywhere. Shirley finally listened to Mary and now has more freedom too. It's time for you to reclaim your freedom and independence with the Inogen 1 G4. Act now to start your 30-day risk-free trial. This is a limited-time offer, so don't wait and don't accept substitutions. The sooner you call, the sooner you can say goodbye to heavy oxygen tanks for good and reclaim the freedom and independence you deserve. Call now for your 30-day risk-free trial.
Call 800-462-8146. That's 800-462-8146.
The IRS is the most feared agency in the country and has the power to seize assets, garnish wages, and even put you in jail for back taxes and unfiled tax returns. Don't be a victim. Call Kick IRS right now and let us kick those IRS problems out of your life once and for all. Our powerful team of tax experts will fight hard for you and will not stop until we've resolved your tax problems on your terms. And if you qualify, we may even reduce or eliminate your tax debt altogether.
Call 1-800-590-7496.
I was appalled that you, our country's elected leaders, were victimized right here in these very halls. That attack, that siege, was criminal behavior, plain and simple, and it's behavior that we, the FBI, view as domestic terrorism.
That FBI Director Christopher Wray today testifying before the Senate's Judiciary Committee about the Capitol Hill riot. Wray was asked several times about the internal warning issued by the Bureau's Norfolk field office right before the attack, saying extremists were preparing to travel to D.C. to commit, and I'm using their words now, war. Take a listen to how the director responded.
Senator, my understanding is that our folks at the time viewed it as raw, unverified, and therefore of unknown reliability information. But because of the level of detail that was in it, the judgment was that given the press of time, given the specificity in it, even though it sounded somewhat aspirational in nature and was unverified, the smartest thing to do, the most prudent thing to do, was just to push it to the people who needed to get it.
Committee Chairman Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, he asked Wray about the lies that Trumpers keep on spreading about who actually stormed the Capitol.
I just have a minute left, but I want to address what I consider the next big lie after the lie that the president really won on November 3rd, President Trump. The next big lie appears to be the argument that somehow or another those were not Trump supporters who invaded the Capitol. It made the rounds on the internet right before they came into the building and has been gaining momentum ever since. I'd like to ask you, Director Ree, do you agree that the Capitol attack involved white supremacists and other violent extremists?
Certainly the Capitol attack involved violent extremists. As I said, we, the FBI, consider this a form of domestic terrorism. It included a variety of backgrounds. Certainly there were quite a number, we're seeing quite a number as we're building out the cases on the individuals we've arrested for the violence, quite a number who what we would call sort of militia violent extremists. So we've got a number who self-identify with, the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers, things like that. We also have a couple of instances where we've already identified individuals involved in the criminal behavior who we would put in the racially motivated violent extremists who advocate for what you would call sort of white supremacy. So there have been some of those individuals as well. One of the things that's happening as part of this is that as we build out the cases on the individuals, when we arrest them for the violence, we're getting a richer and richer understanding of different people's motivations. But certainly, as I said, militia violent extremism, some instances of racially motivated violent extremism, specifically advocating for the superiority of the white race.
Based on your investigation so far, do you have any evidence that the Capitol attack was organized by, quote, fake Trump protesters?
We have not seen evidence of that at this stage, certainly.
They're referring to people like Senator Ron Johnson trying to pin the blame on anyone but the MAGA crowd.
Some obviously didn't fit in, and he describes 4 different types of people: plainclothes militants, agents provocateurs, fake Trump protesters, and then disciplined uniformed column of attackers. I think these are the people that probably planned this.
Again, that a pure and unadulterated lie. He's wrong, and the FBI director said so today. All right, when we come back, kids and teens not likely to get serious cases of COVID, but the deadly virus is still causing a huge amount of seismic problems for our young people, including mental health challenges like depression. After the break, a psychologist who works extensively with this population, he'll join us to discuss.
Villains, robbers, bandits, crooks, they're all over your TV screen. But the biggest thieves are behind your screen. I'm talking about the cable companies. They charge monthly subscriptions, fees, rentals, and force you to take long-term contracts. Well, it's time to say goodbye to the cable guy, because now you can watch 4K Ultra HD broadcast TV for free. Introducing Clear TV's new 4K Ultra HD design, the Premium HD. Just plug it into your TV and start watching for free. You will instantly receive top-rated network shows, local news and weather, sporting events, and even Ultra HD 4K broadcast shows, all for free. Thanks to federal government mandate, all broadcasters are required to transmit a digital TV signal through the airwaves. The new Premium Clear TV lets you bypass cable or satellite to bring network and 4K broadcast shows directly to your television. Retract the antenna to keep it small or extend them for maximum reception.
Setup was so easy. I took my Clear TV antenna, plugged it into the back of the TV, and now I can watch my favorite broadcast channels anywhere in the house for free.
We're just off the coast here in the Gulf of Mexico receiving free network broadcast HD TV. Imagine all the free shows you'll receive at home. Basic cable and satellite services can cost you up to $80 a month. That's $960 a year and almost $10,000 over a 10-year period. Watch TV in as many rooms as you like with no additional monthly fees. Stop spending money you don't have to spend. Call or go online now and get your premium Clear TV 4K Ultra HD antenna for only $19.95. It's backed by our 60-day money-back guarantee. Order now, and you can add a second Clear TV free. Just pay separate processing and handling. That's a $40 value for only $19.95.
I can't believe I get all these channels for free. Plus 4K Ultra HD. Clear TV is for real.
Need life insurance? SelectQuote found Jacob, 40, a $500,000 policy for only $19 a month. And SelectQuote found his wife, Wendy, a $500,000 policy for only $17 a month.
Our secret? At SelectQuote, we aggressively comparison shop up to 10 highly rated companies to find you the company with the best rates. Why pay more? Give your family the security they need at a price you can afford. SelectQuote. We shop, you save.
Welcome back. I know many of you know the numbers. More than 500,000 Americans and counting have been killed by COVID, but some of the other numbers that we're just beginning to get a handle on are some of the consequences beyond the tragic loss of life. The total impact this pandemic has had on the mental health of Americans, particularly teenagers. Tens of millions of kids, as you know, they've been home from school for months, not seeing their friends, pretty much all social activities all but disappeared, and it has taken its toll. Every parent knows this, but now when we see the data, it may even be worse than many of us thought. All of them that I'm going to give you, every metric concerning. A group called Fair Health studied the mental health services of kids between the ages of 13 and 18, and they looked at from last spring versus 2019, found out that anxiety, depression, substance abuse, self-harm, all rose exponentially during the first wave of the pandemic. For more, I want to turn to a man who knows this firsthand. He treats a lot of young people trying to deal with the stresses of COVID. I want to bring in psychologist Dr. Jeff Gardier. And doctor, I can put a perspective on this. I've got 3 teenage kids, 1 in college and 2 in high school. And thankfully, I haven't had to go through some of the horrible experiences a lot of families have. But I see the stress on them, and I hear the stories about what their friends are going through. And a lot of these kids, they get to grow up in a nuclear family where they're not worried about the food on their table. Talk about what you're seeing, because the numbers are jarring, just how traumatic this last year has been for millions and millions of American kids.
Well, Richard, you're absolutely right. Even though many of the kids may not have the concerns about starvation, as we know in the third world, they do have the real problems still of the mental health tsunami that came from COVID-19. Everything that you've said, not being able to get in-person instruction, not attending graduations, not going to football games or being able to play the first tier sports that they're used to. So what we're seeing is a record number of cases of anxiety and depression in these young people. Certainly, again, what you said, suicide rates are increasing, and these kids are really suffering. We often think, Richard, that children are resilient, but this is the first time these kids, as we have in this lifetime, have gone through a pandemic, and how it's affecting them in many ways very similar to how it affects us as adults, and that many of us have anxiety and depression. Many of us are going into therapy to deal with this upside down world, but how they're being affected in many ways is just as serious, if not even more.
You know, and I've heard different thinking on this. One is, doctor, that young people see their parents struggling or going through some of the same stresses, or let alone the family environment where people aren't going off to the office or whatever, and constrained in a closer environment only ramps up. And they don't feel, these kids do, that they can articulate their problems, because compared to maybe what their parents are going through, or what extended family, maybe there's a loss of life or whatever else, they feel they got to bottle it up. And we're talking still developing kids here. They're not equipped to do that, nor should they.
That's right. And that's why we have a term that we use in psychology called acting out. And that is a defense mechanism where they're not able to identify verbally or even consciously the angst that they are experiencing. So instead, they may get angry, they may throw things, maybe they'll sexually act out, maybe they'll use drugs. And so they're not able to have or able to articulate exactly what it is that they're feeling. So you're right, bottling it up inside, internalizing it, keeps us from hearing what they're going through, but certainly we can see what it is that they are experiencing by a lot of the inappropriate behaviors. I was working with a youngster who went outside of his bubble, got into a lot of trouble with his parents, but this youngster felt absolutely horrified by it, felt so guilty, was angry with himself, and cried for days after this. Normally, we don't see that in a teenager. When they get in trouble, you know, they deal with it, they move on. And so we know that these kids have been emotionally compromised because of COVID.
You know, doctor, I've heard, and you can put a finer point on it, that the demand far outweighs the supply for kids who need someone, a professional to talk to. Obviously, can't do it in person anymore. It ain't the same. Zoom's better than nothing, I grant you, but there's not enough of you guys to go around. And I believe I'm under counting just how much the demand is out there, aren't I?
The demand was incredible to begin with, the supply and demand before COVID. Not enough pediatricians, child psychologists, social workers, psychiatrists, they just weren't there. So in many ways, parents were very, very upset, felt very frustrated that when they wanted to get help for their kids, they couldn't do it. Now, with the demands on our time as therapists, and by the way, when we're looking at the African American or Latinx population, only 5% of the psychologists and psychiatrists, I think it's even 3%, are African American. So these parents are just ripping their hair out, trying to find ways to get help for their kids. And you're right, doing teletherapy certainly has been something that has helped us, many of us, but some of the parents have been laid off. They don't have the insurance to pay for the therapy. So it has been very, very difficult to even get the needed help that the kids need out there, and they really need it, and they need it now.
You know, I don't want to bombard my audience with numbers, but the overdose helplines, the call volume has gone through the roof. I saw a number, scared the living hell out of me. 1 in 4 kids between 18 and 24 has contemplated suicide. Listen, I thought, and I'll show my ignorance, a year ago, I had a kid graduating, and I said, oh, big deal, you don't get to go to your prom, you don't get to go to your graduation, big scheme of things, you've got it going pretty good. That was the worst thing I could have said, let alone articulated. Talk about what parents who are dealing with kids that are missing important signposts in their life, who are missing seeing their friends, who are missing the normal things that kids need here, socialization. What should they do?
Well, first of all, Richard, I don't think what you said was so bad. Maybe it might have been a little bit insensitive in that quite often that we as parents say things to our kids where we say, hey, suck it up, it'll be okay. But I think all of us are learning, Richard, all of us as parents, as we go along, are learning that we're going to have to do it in a very different way. We're going to have to really listen to kids now during these times of the pandemic. We're really going to have to pay attention to some of their very subtle behaviors, as well as some of their outrageous behaviors, that these are, in many ways, their cries for help, and that we can always do better. We're not always available as parents, especially in these times that we're in. But as long as we try to do better every day with our kids, and we try to establish that rapport, it's not always going to be perfect. We're learning along the way. This is our first pandemic that we've shared together, Richard, with our kids. So certainly, as we learn and get better and do better, I think our kids will appreciate that effort.
Dr. Gardier, great advice as always. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to put a bow on tonight's show. Please stay with us.
Here's an important message from the Diabetes Solutions Center. Diabetics understand all too well the pain of pricking your fingers. But now, by wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can immediately reduce your pain. It's easy to use and helps you make more accurate diabetes treatment decisions. If you are testing your blood sugar 4 or more times daily, injecting insulin 3 or more times daily, or using an insulin pump, call the Diabetes Solutions Center right now to learn about this groundbreaking new CGM technology. And if you have Medicare, you can get a new CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost. Shipping is free, and we'll even bill your insurance company for you. If you are testing your blood sugar 4 or more times daily, injecting insulin 3 or more times daily, or using an insulin pump, call the Diabetes Solutions Center right now to learn how you can get your own continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
This is important news for people who took certain drugs for HIV and then suffered serious injury to their kidneys or bones. Your HIV drug could have contained TDF, an ingredient known to increase the risk of kidney disease and kidney failure. TDF has also been linked to bone fractures, bone density loss, and softening of the bones. If you or a loved one took Truvada, Viriad, Atroplus, Stribild, or Complera and then suffered from kidney disease, kidney failure, bone fractures, osteoporosis, osteopenia, or osteomalacia, call the lawyers at Davis & Crump right now to see if you're eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. If you or a loved one took any of these medications and were then diagnosed with kidney disease, kidney failure, bone fractures, bone density loss, or softening of the bones, call Davis & Crump right now to see if you're eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Our first consultation is free, and we don't get paid unless you get paid. Call Davis & Crump right now. Operators are standing by.
No one wants to get that phone call to where your child has been diagnosed with cancer. So to come here and receive the treatment, not only physically, but emotionally as well, at no cost, means everything. I can't express how much I appreciate everything that St. Jude has done for us.
Okay, that's going to do it for tonight's program, but please tune in tomorrow night. We have on, as they say, the Dean of the Albany Press Corps, the New York Times Albany Bureau Chief. He'll talk about the latest with the Cuomo investigations and this growing scandal. Again, that's coming up tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope to see you then. Bye.